What if, on an ordinary summer day, your child ran just a few steps ahead and vanished forever? No cries for help, no signs of struggle, just silence. How do you live with the unbearable weight of not knowing where they are or what happened? And what if, years later, an anonymous voice claimed to have taken them, whispering details so chillingly precise that they couldn't be ignored? This is the haunting story of 4-year-old Nyleen Kay Marshall, who disappeared on June 25, 1983, during a family outing in Montana's Helena National Forest. What began as an innocent day in the wilderness turned into a nightmare, a mystery so confounding that it has endured for decades, leaving investigators and her family desperate for answers. Imagine the scene: a picturesque forest, sunlight filtering through the towering trees, and the sound of children laughing as they play nearby. It's a setting of peace and serenity, a place where nothing bad is supposed to happen. But then, in the blink of an eye, Nyleen was gone. A little girl who had been right there laughing, running, full of life, had vanished into the vast, unyielding wilderness. The search that followed was nothing short of monumental. Hundreds of volunteers combed the dense forest, rescue dogs sniffed tirelessly for her scent, and helicopters scanned the area from above. But despite their relentless efforts, no trace of Nyleen was ever found. No footprints, no torn fabric, no cries echoing through the trees. It was as though the earth itself had swallowed her whole. And then, years later, a new and sinister twist emerged. Cryptic letters and phone calls began to surface, each one claiming to know what had happened to Nyleen. The anonymous messages described a life lived far away, hidden in plain sight, and detailed moments that seemed too specific to dismiss. But who sent them? And could they be trusted? This story is not just a mystery, it is a journey into the unknown. It is a tale of a family's unyielding hope, a community's relentless search for truth, and a puzzle that continues to defy explanation. What makes this case unforgettable is not just the disappearance itself, but the enduring questions it raises. Who took Nyleen Kay Marshall? Was she truly abducted, or did something far more unthinkable happen? And most disturbingly, is there someone out there who still holds the answers? Today we unravel the layers of a story that has haunted investigators and gripped the hearts of all who hear it. This is the haunting mystery of Nyleen Kay Marshall, a child's disappearance and cryptic clues. Nyleen Kay Marshall was a child who seemed to radiate joy wherever she went. Born in 1978, she was the youngest in her family, a bright-eyed 4-year-old, full of curiosity and life. Her parents often described her as adventurous, always eager to explore the world around her. Despite her tender age, Nyleen possessed a remarkable sense of independence, qualities that would make her disappearance all the more baffling. The Marshall family lived in Clancy, Montana, a small town surrounded by rolling hills and the kind of natural beauty that draws families to the outdoors. For the Marshalls, nature wasn't just a backdrop, it was a way of life. Weekends were often spent hiking, camping, and exploring the serene wilderness of Montana, and June 25, 1983, was no different. That Saturday morning, the family joined friends for a picnic in the Helena National Forest. The air was warm, the sky a bright, unbroken blue, and the towering pine trees cast long, dappled shadows over the soft forest floor. It was the kind of day that invited laughter and relaxation, a chance to escape the bustle of daily life and bask in the simplicity of nature. The children played together near a gentle stream, their giggles mingling with the rustling leaves and the soft trickle of water. Nyleen, dressed in a pink top and blue shorts, darted between the trees, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. She was within sight of the adults, her cheerful voice carrying through the air. But then, without warning, everything changed. It was a moment so ordinary it didn't immediately raise alarm. Nyleen had wandered ahead, as children often do, curious about a butterfly or the glimmer of sunlight on the stream. The adults called out to her, expecting her to appear from behind a tree or emerge from a small cluster of bushes. But she didn't. Minutes passed, and what began as a light-hearted search quickly turned frantic. Nyleen's name echoed through the forest, each call growing louder, more urgent. The group fanned out, scanning every corner of the clearing where the children had been playing. But Nyleen was nowhere to be found. As panic set in, the serene beauty of the forest transformed into an imposing labyrinth. The tall pines that had seemed so majestic now cast ominous shadows, their towering trunks obscuring sightlines. The air, once filled with laughter, grew heavy with tension, the silence broken only by the sound of frantic footsteps crunching through underbrush. The initial search party quickly expanded. Friends, neighbors, and volunteers from the nearby town rushed to the scene, determined to find the missing girl. Within hours, the Helena National Forest became a hive of activity. Rescue teams arrived with trained search dogs, and helicopters hovered overhead, their blades slicing through the stillness as they scanned the dense canopy below. Searchers combed the area methodically, forming lines to cover every inch of the forest floor. They checked under fallen logs, peered into small caves, and waded through the stream, hoping to find any clue that might lead them to Nyleen. But the forest seemed to resist their efforts, holding its secrets tightly. Days turned into nights, and the search continued relentlessly. Volunteers worked in shifts, some refusing to leave even as exhaustion set in. Parents clutched flashlights and shouted Nyleen's name into the darkness, their voices trembling with hope and fear. But as the hours stretched on, hope began to waver. What made Nyleen's disappearance so unsettling was the complete absence of evidence. There were no footprints, no articles of clothing, no signs of a struggle. It was as though she had simply vanished, leaving behind nothing but the echo of her laughter. Even the search dogs, trained to pick up scents over vast distances, found no trail to follow. The forest, so full of life, offered only silence. Theories began to swirl among the searchers. Could Nyleen have fallen into the stream and been carried away? Could a wild animal have taken her? Or was it possible that someone had snatched her, slipping away unnoticed in the confusion? Each possibility was more chilling than the last, and none offered any concrete answers. Despite the overwhelming effort, the search yielded nothing. After 2 weeks of combing the area, the official operation was scaled back. For the Marshall family, the absence of closure was unbearable. Nyleen was not just missing, she was gone without a trace, leaving behind a void that no amount of searching could fill. And so, the forest returned to its quiet, its trails no longer marked by the footsteps of searchers, its trees standing as silent witnesses to whatever had happened that day. But the questions lingered, haunting everyone who had been there. How could a child simply disappear? And why had the forest refused to give up its secrets? This was only the beginning of a mystery that would take years to unravel, a story with twists and turns no one could have anticipated. When the initial search efforts failed to locate Nyleen Kay Marshall, law enforcement took over, determined to uncover the truth behind her baffling disappearance. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office spearheaded the investigation, calling in additional support from state and federal agencies. The pressure was immense. This was no longer just a missing child, it was a case teetering on the edge of something far darker. From the outset, the investigators faced an uphill battle. The Helena National Forest, with its vast and rugged terrain, presented countless challenges. Officers meticulously combed through every possible scenario, ruling out some theories while grappling with others that only deepened the mystery. Their first theory was the most straightforward: an accidental disappearance. It was plausible that Nyleen had wandered too far from the picnic area, losing her way in the dense forest. The uneven terrain, coupled with hidden hazards like streams and ravines, made this a chilling possibility. Yet, as searchers scoured the forest inch by inch, they found no signs of a fall, no trail leading to a hidden spot, nothing to suggest she had become lost. The second theory was even more disturbing: a wild animal attack. The forest was home to predators like bears and mountain lions, and it wasn't unheard of for a small child to become a victim of such a tragedy. But this theory, too, had its flaws. Animal attacks typically leave behind clear evidence: clothing, footprints, disturbed ground. Investigators found none of these. The silence of the forest was as deafening as it was confounding. Then came the possibility no one wanted to entertain: abduction. Could someone have taken Nyleen? Witnesses from the picnic group were questioned extensively. No one reported seeing a stranger in the area, but the forest was vast, and the possibility that someone could have slipped in and out unnoticed couldn't be ruled out. The community's response to Nyleen's disappearance was immediate and overwhelming. Residents of Clancy and nearby towns rallied together, offering their time, resources, and unwavering determination to bring the little girl home. Local businesses provided supplies for the searchers, while schools and churches organized vigils and prayer meetings. It seemed as though the entire region had been united by a shared sense of urgency and heartbreak. Volunteers joined law enforcement in canvassing the area. Flyers bearing Nyleen's bright smile and description were plastered on every telephone pole, store window, and gas station bulletin board. The image of the cheerful 4-year-old with blonde hair and sparkling eyes became a constant reminder of the child who was still missing. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to wane. Leads came in, but most proved fruitless. A camper reported seeing a child matching Nyleen's description near a trailhead several miles from the picnic site, but investigators could find no evidence to corroborate the sighting. Another tip suggested that a suspicious-looking man had been spotted driving away from the area, but the lead quickly fizzled when no additional details emerged. The most bizarre theories came from members of the public, whose imaginations often ran wild. Some speculated about cult involvement, citing whispers of ritual activity in remote parts of the forest. Others claimed to have seen lights in the sky that day, hinting at something far more extraordinary. Law enforcement chased down every credible lead, but as time passed, the trail grew colder. Despite the lack of progress, the investigators refused to give up. They interviewed known offenders in the area, checked records for anyone who might have had a motive, and even consulted behavioral analysts to profile a potential abductor. But every avenue seemed to lead to a dead end, leaving the case mired in frustration. The forest, which had once been a haven for the Marshall family, now stood as a silent sentinel over its secrets. Law enforcement combed through it repeatedly, turning over every leaf, every branch, every stone, but still Nyleen remained elusive. Each passing day without answers compounded the agony for her family and community. The once vivid memory of Nyleen's laughter was now a haunting echo, underscoring the question that no one could answer: how could a child vanish so completely? Years after the search for Nyleen Kay Marshall had faded from the front pages and the forest had returned to its quiet, an eerie development breathed new life into the case. It began with a series of anonymous letters and phone calls, cryptic messages that claimed to hold answers to the questions that had haunted Nyleen's family and investigators for so long. The first letter arrived in 1985, 2 years after Nyleen vanished. Addressed to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The letter was written in careful, deliberate handwriting. The sender claimed to have Nyleen in their care, describing in unsettling detail a life they said she was living far from Montana. The tone of the letter was calm, almost conversational, as if the sender wanted to reassure authorities while keeping their identity shrouded in secrecy. The letter described Nyleen as happy and healthy, living with a new family who loved her. It mentioned mundane details about her life: what she liked to eat, the toys she played with, and how she was homeschooled to avoid detection. But these reassurances were overshadowed by the chilling implications of the letter's contents. The sender claimed to have rescued Nyleen from her previous life, suggesting that they believed they were acting in her best interest. Law enforcement was stunned. The specificity of the details seemed almost too precise to be fabricated. The letter included personal tidbits about Nyleen that had not been widely publicized, details her family immediately recognized. But while the message reignited hope that Nyleen might still be alive, it also raised a far more sinister question. Who was this person, and why had they taken her? Not long after the letter, a series of anonymous phone calls began to trickle in, adding yet another layer to the mystery. The caller's voice was described as male, calm and deliberate, much like the tone of the letter. He reiterated that Nyleen was safe, even happy, but provided no specifics about where she was being kept. At one point, the caller chillingly referred to Nyleen as mine, a possessive term that sent shivers through those listening. Investigators took the letter and recordings of the calls to forensic experts. Handwriting analysts scrutinized every curve and stroke of the writing, searching for clues about the sender's identity. Linguistic experts examined the language, noting the measured, almost clinical phrasing of the messages. There was no clear dialect or regional accent, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint the sender's location. Even the tone of the calls presented a contradiction. The voice on the other end was calm, almost unnervingly so, yet it carried an undercurrent of something darker. Psychologists speculated that the sender might be delusional, genuinely believing they were protecting Nyleen, or that the calmness was a mask for something far more calculated. Despite their efforts, law enforcement was unable to verify the sender's claims. No physical evidence accompanied the messages, no photographs, no proof of Nyleen's current whereabouts. Investigators were left with nothing but words, chilling in their specificity yet frustratingly ambiguous. The cryptic nature of the letters and calls sparked a renewed wave of public interest in the case. News outlets picked up the story, broadcasting the contents of the messages and speculating on their implications. Communities across the country were gripped by the possibility that Nyleen was still alive, hidden in plain sight. For Nyleen's family, the letters and calls were both a beacon of hope and a source of torment. On one hand, the possibility that she was alive brought a renewed sense of purpose to their search. On the other hand, the lack of concrete evidence left them in a painful limbo, unable to move forward but unwilling to give up. The FBI launched a deeper investigation into the messages, tracing their origins as best they could. The letter was mailed from Madison, Wisconsin, but attempts to identify the sender through postmarks and other clues led to a dead end. The phone calls, too, were traced to public payphones, offering no additional insight into the caller's identity. The ambiguity of the messages created a chilling paradox. They seemed to confirm that Nyleen might still be alive, yet they provided no tangible leads. Investigators were left grappling with the same question that had haunted them from the start: who took Nyleen, and why? As the years passed, the cryptic letters and calls became an enduring enigma, a puzzle that only deepened the mystery surrounding Nyleen's disappearance. They reignited a case that had gone cold, but they also left behind more questions than answers, ensuring that the story of Nyleen Kay Marshall would remain one of the most haunting unsolved cases in history. When a case like Nyleen Kay Marshall's lingers unsolved for decades, the absence of answers inevitably gives rise to theories, some grounded in logic, others shaped by the desperation to make sense of the unimaginable. Over the years, investigators, family members, and armchair detectives alike have pieced together potential scenarios, each attempting to unravel what truly happened to the 4-year-old girl who vanished into the Montana wilderness. One of the earliest and most enduring theories is that Nyleen was abducted by a stranger. The remote location of Helena National Forest made this possibility both unlikely and hauntingly plausible. While no one at the picnic reported seeing an unfamiliar individual, the dense forest offered ample cover for someone to approach undetected. Could a predator have been lurking, waiting for a moment of opportunity? Law enforcement explored this possibility extensively. Known offenders in the region were questioned, their alibis scrutinized. But the trail grew cold. Profiles of potential suspects varied from a transient passing through the area to someone with intimate knowledge of the forest's layout. Yet, with no witnesses and no physical evidence, the abduction theory remained frustratingly unprovable. Some investigators speculated about a snatch-and-dash scenario, a calculated abduction where the perpetrator intended to leave no trace. The letters and phone calls received years later seemed to bolster this theory, suggesting that someone had taken Nyleen and kept her hidden for reasons only they could understand. But without further evidence, this chilling hypothesis remained just that, a theory. Another avenue of investigation turned inward, focusing on the possibility that someone close to Nyleen could have been involved. It's a painful truth that, in many cases of missing children, the family is scrutinized not out of malice, but because statistics often point in that direction. Investigators interviewed everyone who had been at the picnic that day, carefully noting their accounts of events. Nyleen's parents, devastated by her disappearance, cooperated fully, but the shadow of suspicion lingered in the background. Could an argument, an accident, or even a moment of negligence have led to something far worse? The idea that Nyleen might have run away seemed implausible at first. She was only 4 years old, after all. But some speculated that a moment of curiosity could have drawn her farther from the group than anyone realized. Perhaps she had wandered in search of something, a butterfly, a sound, or even another child, and simply kept going. Yet, if that were the case, why hadn't search teams found any trace of her? The forest seemed determined to keep its secrets. The theories didn't end there. Some leaned toward the idea of foul play, suggesting that an accident or deliberate act had occurred, and the evidence had been somehow hidden or destroyed. This theory, while grim, offered an explanation for the lack of physical evidence. A body could have been concealed in the dense underbrush, carried away by an animal, or even buried beneath the forest floor. Others entertained the possibility of a deliberate disappearance, not by Nyleen, but by someone who had the means and motive to take her. Could someone have planned to remove her from her family, believing they could offer her a better life? The letters and phone calls hinted at such a scenario, but the lack of verifiable details left more questions than answers. As the years passed, the theories surrounding Nyleen's disappearance grew more complex, each one attempting to fill the gaps left by the absence of evidence. Investigators returned to the forest time and again, hoping new technology or a fresh perspective might uncover something they had missed. But the wilderness remained silent, its towering trees standing as silent witnesses to whatever had occurred on that fateful day. The lack of resolution has kept Nyleen's case in the realm of the unsolved, a chilling reminder of how easily a life can slip through the cracks of our understanding. Each theory, abduction, accident, foul play, offers a potential answer, yet none can definitively explain how a child could vanish so completely. The haunting reality is that Nyleen's disappearance may never be fully understood. It's a case that challenges not only the limits of investigation, but the human capacity to accept uncertainty. And as the years continue to pass, the mystery of what happened to Nyleen Kay Marshall only deepens, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and unrelenting grief. For the Marshall family, life after Nyleen's disappearance was a maze of heartbreak and unanswered questions. Days stretched into weeks, then months, and eventually years, but the pain of her absence never dulled. Her parents, Kim and Nancy Marshall, found themselves trapped in a cycle of hope and despair, unable to let go but powerless to move forward. Each passing day without answers felt like a fresh wound, reopening the agony of that sunny afternoon in June 1983. The loss of Nyleen didn't just affect her parents, it rippled through the entire family. Her siblings, too young at the time to fully understand the enormity of what had happened, grew up in the shadow of her absence. Holidays, birthdays, and milestones became bittersweet reminders of the little girl who should have been there. Photographs of Nyleen, smiling and carefree, adorned the family home, serving as both a tribute and a painful reminder of what had been lost. For Kim Marshall, Nyleen's father, the weight of not knowing often manifested in long silences. He poured his energy into the search, joining law enforcement efforts and keeping her name alive in public consciousness. For Nancy, her mother, the anguish was deeply personal. She clung to the hope that Nyleen might still be alive, that perhaps one day the phone would ring, and a voice would tell her what she so desperately needed to hear. That hope, however fragile, became her anchor. The community of Clancy, Montana, shared in the Marshall family's pain. In a town where everyone knew everyone, Nyleen's disappearance was not just a personal tragedy but a collective wound. Friends and neighbors who had joined the initial search spoke of how the forest seemed different after that day, its familiar paths and trails now tinged with an unshakable sense of loss. Years after the search had officially ended, Nyleen's case remained a frequent topic of conversation in the town. At local gatherings, someone would inevitably bring up her name, sharing memories or speculating about what might have happened. Candles were lit during vigils, and her picture continued to hang in public spaces, a silent plea for answers. Even as new generations grew up in Clancy, they were told the story of the little girl who disappeared, ensuring that her memory would not fade. Nyleen's case also had a broader impact, inspiring changes in how missing children cases were handled across the region. The chaos and heartbreak of the search revealed gaps in existing protocols, prompting law enforcement agencies to reevaluate their strategies. Search teams became better coordinated, with improved communication and resource management. The use of helicopters, drones, and specialized tracking technology became standard in similar cases, ensuring that no stone would be left unturned in future searches. On a national level, Nyleen's disappearance contributed to a growing awareness of the importance of swift action when a child goes missing. Her case joined others in highlighting the need for centralized databases, such as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which played a pivotal role in bringing attention to her story. Advocacy groups rallied around her name, using her disappearance as a call to action for improved safety measures and community vigilance. Public campaigns urged parents to educate their children about safety without instilling fear. Flyers, television segments, and later, internet campaigns reminded people that even in seemingly safe places, vigilance was key. For the Marshall family, these efforts were bittersweet proof that Nyleen's story had made an impact, but also a reminder of the cost at which that awareness had come. As the years passed, the pain of losing Nyleen remained a constant for those who knew her, but it also served as a catalyst for change. Her name became synonymous with the resilience of a family, the determination of a community, and the hope that even in the darkest moments, answers might one day emerge. The disappearance of Nyleen Kay Marshall is more than just a haunting mystery, it's a stark reminder of how little we sometimes know about the world around us. Her case has left not only her family and community searching for answers, but also experts in the fields of criminology, psychology, and missing persons advocacy, who continue to reflect on what it teaches us about the complexities of such tragedies. Criminologists often point to cases like Nyleen's as evidence of the challenges that law enforcement faces in solving missing persons cases, especially those involving children. Dr. Rachel Thornton, a leading criminologist, has spoken about how the lack of physical evidence in Nyleen's case complicates the narrative. When no clues are left behind, no footprints, no fibers, it's almost as if the person vanished into thin air, she explains. This forces investigators to work almost entirely with theories, which can stretch resources and delay meaningful progress. Psychologists, meanwhile, focus on the human side of these mysteries, especially the toll they take on families and communities. Dr. Elaine Monroe, a child psychologist and advocate for missing children, highlights how uncertainty amplifies trauma. For families, not knowing is the hardest part. It keeps the mind spinning, imagining every possible scenario. This is why so many families of missing children struggle to find closure even years later. They are trapped in a cycle of hope and despair. Advocates for missing persons also emphasize the lessons learned from cases like Nyleen's. They argue that her story underscores the importance of vigilance, not only in response to disappearances but also in prevention. Groups such as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have cited Nyleen's case as a turning point, prompting changes in how searches are conducted and awareness campaigns are designed. Advancements in forensic science have also reshaped the way authorities approach similar cases. In the 1980s, investigative tools where limited DNA analysis was in its infancy, and digital record keeping was non-existent. Today, these tools could have made a significant difference. Forensic analysts now use advanced methods such as environmental DNA sampling, satellite imaging, and data triangulation to reconstruct events with far greater accuracy. Technology has also revolutionized how missing persons are tracked and located. Real-time GPS systems, thermal imaging, and drones have become invaluable tools in searches. In cases like Nyleen's, where physical terrain plays a significant role, these technologies offer new ways to overcome the challenges of dense wilderness or remote locations. But even with these advancements, ethical questions remain. When a child disappears, how far is too far in the search for answers? Should personal privacy ever be sacrificed in the name of finding the truth? Should families be subject to relentless scrutiny if it means uncovering the smallest of clues? These are questions that have no easy answers but are central to understanding the broader implications of cases like Nyleen's. And for the audience, the most pressing question of all lingers: what would you do if faced with such a devastating loss? How far would you go to uncover the truth, even if the answers might never bring the closure you seek? Nyleen's case is a story of mystery and heartbreak, but it's also a call to action. It reminds us that every missing person deserves to be searched for, every lead followed, and every question asked. It's a story that forces us to confront the fragility of life and the resilience of those who continue to fight for answers, no matter how much time has passed. The story of Nyleen Kay Marshall is a chilling reminder of how, in an instant, life can take an unfathomable turn. A bright, joyful 4-year-old girl vanished into the quiet shadows of the Helena National Forest, leaving behind a mystery that has endured for decades. We've retraced the events of that fateful day, the serene picnic that turned into a frantic search, the exhaustive efforts of volunteers and authorities, and the eerie silence of the forest, which refused to reveal any trace of her. We've examined the haunting letters and calls that surfaced years later, cryptic messages claiming to hold answers but offering only more questions. And we've delved into the theories, from abduction to tragic accident, each one more unsettling than the last. But for every lead followed, and every theory explored, the truth about Nyleen's disappearance remains elusive. How could a child disappear so completely? Was she taken by a stranger, as some believe, or is there a darker explanation hiding in plain sight? The unanswered questions linger, haunting her family, investigators, and the community that rallied around her name. As we reflect on this story, let's not forget the human side of this tragedy. Nyleen was more than just a missing person. She was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend. Her family continues to live with the unbearable weight of not knowing, a pain few can truly comprehend. The anguish they've endured reminds us of the importance of compassion, support, and vigilance for all families facing similar heartbreak. And now we turn to you, our audience. What do you think happened to Nyleen? Could the cryptic messages have been genuine, or were they the cruel work of someone seeking attention? We want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and join the conversation. Your voice helps keep Nyleen's story alive, and every shared idea brings us closer to the truth. If this story moved you, consider supporting organizations dedicated to finding missing children and helping their families. Groups like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children rely on public support to continue their vital work. Together we can ensure that no case is forgotten and no family is left without hope. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that delve into the unknown. And make sure to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next episode. Thank you for joining us on this journey. The story of Nyleen Kay Marshall may be one of unanswered questions, but it's also a testament to the enduring strength of those who refuse to stop searching. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and never stop seeking the truth.